This video is sponsored by Metroid. More on that later. The scariest experiences are often the most unexpected. We play horror games with certain expectations and with the knowledge that we're mostly playing these types of games to spike our adrenaline or to feel that rush when escaping a scary monster, but for me, the most effective way to be scared by a game is outside of horror games. What gets me the most is the inspiration behind it. A games developer has to make the conscious decision to inject their fairly harmless video game with a host of terrifying ideas that can dramatically change what someone remembers from a game and how they feel about it. It can often tug at fears that you never expected to have exposed by a non-horror video game, and that act in of itself can be pretty invasive. Like, I'm playing this game right now because I don't want to be scared. Can you calm it down a bit? I live for scary things popping up in places where they really shouldn't because of how powerless it can make you feel, and there really aren't a lot of games out there that can do that. However, if you want to feel more powerful, then it's perhaps fortunate that this video is sponsored by Metroid, which is a 5v5 competitive shooter where you hop inside a mech and shoot the hell out of the other guys. You know, I'm sure being blown up inside a mech is scary for someone else. Mobile games are a gamble because you might be playing something you like but get slammed into the ground by someone who spent more money than you, but that's where Metroid comes in as the sponsor of this video, and also as an impressive multiplayer shooter that relies on the size of a player's skill and not their wallet. You can jump in, blow up some mechs with your friends and be out before you know it, and with so many powerful mechs to choose from with lots of different weapons to unlock, upgrade and kit your mech out with, you can find something that fits your own playstyle in no time at all. I prefer faster mechs like the Lancer because it can jump, which helps me dodge enemy fire and go on crazy flanks that are just so much fun. That's the thing though, I get better at Mech Arena by playing more games and not just pouring more money into it, and it ends up being really satisfying because of that. Mech Arena are always running big events and have amazing daily welcome rewards during the first week, so now's a great time to join up. It's completely free to play on Android and iOS right now, and you can use my link or this QR code right here to get the Black Carbon Skin 300 A coins and 50,000 credits, which will all help to kickstart your game. If you're quick, you might even be able to add me as a friend as RabbidLuigi and we can blow stuff up together, so don't wait around. We have much to destroy. Okay then, spooky where there shouldn't be spooky. Try not to get spooked. If you've ever seen one of these videos where I highlight how scary a game can be without owning up to being a horror game, you'll know exactly where this is going, and I'm honest enough to admit that I love The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask a little too much. It's still probably not my favourite Zelda game because it's actually an extremely unconventional interpretation of the classic Zelda formula that even in the early 2000s was starting to tread the same path of every game. Majora's Mask came in and shook things up with a time loop and a bunch of funky masks, and just the slightest hint of, oh no, the world's gonna end when the moon crashes into the land below, killing everyone in an all-consuming fireball. A premise so dramatic that they're making a film about it all these years later. So yeah, that tends to change how everyone is feeling around you in Majora's Mask, and how it feels to journey across the land of Termina, because it's not quite the same jolly jaunt from one tribe to the next looking for important objects as we've seen in other Zelda games. It's altogether more serious and definitely a lot scarier. Though I have to admit, a lot of Majora's Mask appeal as a scary game comes more from implied horror than anything that is screamed in your face, although even then, there are moments where the veil is lifted just enough for some unfiltered scariness to leak out, like the jump scare with Pamela's father, and the faces that Link pulls when he puts on a transformation mask for the first time. Nah, for me, Majora's Mask is a scary game because of how it almost tries to struggle on with being a normal Zelda game with dungeons and songs and Epona, but set against a backdrop of inevitable destruction and a world full of people who aren't coping well with that possibility. For a game being aimed at children, there's an incredible amount of subtext about grief and responsibility and the heavy burden of the knowledge that every cycle resets all major events in the game, and so kinda nothing really matters. And yet, these people are destined to repeat their same routine until the apocalypse can be abated, giving it this otherworldly, dreamlike quality that both doesn't feel real at all, but also feels way too real. It's a philosophical study waiting to happen, and a game that I've thought about since the gravity of events sunk in many years after I first played it as a young child. Perhaps more psychologically scary than anything to avert, but definitely a game that becomes scarier the more time you have to think about it. Maybe Nintendo should rush sequels out a bit more often. It's so easy for a game's qualities to be diluted over time as more and more people interpret the experience differently. Overexposure is a real thing that can strip games of their meaning, and you'd have a hard time convincing people that the likes of Undertale and Five Nights at Freddy's are the genre powerhouses that they are amidst the deluge of fans doing fan things. Minecraft is a similar problem, but one born from the sheer amount of it that has been played since its official release 10 years ago, with the core Minecraft experience being augmented by mods and custom maps and music videos. This is all fine as a way of appreciating the game, but it also does a fantastic job of masking just how terrifying Minecraft is. I know, hard to appreciate that as a concept when you're too busy putting the finishing touches on your giant fuck-off castle, but I can't help but remember how exposed you are on your first night. It's a survival game at the end of the day, and while surviving eventually becomes trivial, those early moments are fraught with confusion and an overwhelming sense of unease that the night is hiding countless monsters. And that's before you dig a little deeper. Mining is a feature that defines Minecraft as a game that is dripping with atmosphere. It's half the title of the game. You can't do a lot in Minecraft without breaking through the ground below and venturing into the vast network of caves that house so many goodies and also, like, a ton of scary shit. As soon as you work out that darkness is what spawns enemies, you treat darkness like this terrifying force of nature that houses entire voids of enemies and potentially a swift end to your adventure. It's an even more harrowing experience if you're one of those crazy boys who play on hardcore, because suddenly everything is scary and perfectly capable of permanently killing you in the blink of an eye. And in a game where you can grow attached to the home you've built and the character you've nurtured, insta-death is horrifying to contemplate. I can appreciate the multiplayer side of Minecraft for co-op play and being able to experience a procedurally generated world with a friend, but you explore it on your own, and especially at night, and nowhere genuinely feels safe. But damn, revenge still slaps hard. When you go back to playing vanilla Minecraft, having previously played a version of the game that you've filled with mods, it can sometimes feel like you've downgraded, but actually it allows you to hone in on what playing this game really feels like. And honestly, when you're at your most vulnerable, this is not okay. Creepers stay silent until the moment they're about to kill you. Fuck. Metroid Dread is gonna rock everyone's shit, and I'm just about ready for it. It's the latest entry into a franchise that has always flirted with the idea of horror, but firmly exists in more of a horror-adjacent space, where the best games are capable of making a lot of these strange planets feel very alien and hostile. Metroid Dread seems to be following in those footsteps with the added bonus of a scary robot that chases you around a space station with what looks like an instant game over if you get caught, and while I can't include it in this video because we're still about a month away from it being released, I can draw on some of this historic creepiness that Metroid has dabbled with in the past and reflect on what the hell was going on with Metroid Fusion. There's horror adjacent, and then there's just horror pretending to be a 2D platformer. You ain't fooling anyone. I wouldn't describe Metroid Fusion as one of the best Metroid games out there, since it's a lot more linear than a lot of the other series highlights, and that means you don't get the usual Metroidvania style of exploration. But it is still a good game, because all that backtracking has been replaced by a murderous alien that hunts you down and wants to kill you. That's probably why there's not a lot of backtracking. You really wouldn't want to do it. Most good Metroid games are fully capable of turning the atmosphere up to deeply uncomfortable levels as you explore this alien world full of unknown threats, but Metroid Fusion sacrifices wide open expanses for more claustrophobic environments that broadly de-emphasize exploration. That just means that you're often funneled into sudden set pieces where murderous Stalker of the Hour SAX either mercilessly hunts you down or lurks ominously in the background, helping to ramp up the creepiness in a game that is already going the extra mile to set itself apart from every previous Metroid game in the collection. I kinda see Fusion as a more fully realised version of tense moments from previous Metroid games. You play those games as a wide-eyed space explorer, like Dora the Explorer with an arm cannon, and only sometimes does the game bite back with some immediate danger. Metroid Fusion is consistently scary in a way that Metroid has never really done before, and I just hope that Dread can match up to it in about a month's time. I really hope people buy this game in vast quantities because we need Metroid back to its best, and we especially need Metroid trying extra hard to be scary. One of the main villains is literally named after the guy who made Alien. It's hardly a subtle influence. I'll admit that a lot of games out there straddle the line of maybe being a horror game, but in the end they hone in on one specific genre that their gameplay is better suited for. I guess that just raised the question of whether or not survival horror is too actiony with all its guns. Is a game scary if you can adequately defend yourself? Not if you know what you're doing. There are few games out there that come as close to being a horror game without fully committing to their idea as Bioshock. By all counts, this is a first-person shooter with superpowers, which in isolation is more than enough firepower to banish the notion of horror to some long-forgotten blanket box. But much like Metroid Fusion, Bioshock is a game that is built from the ground up with its atmosphere doing most of the legwork. Same kind of idea too, except rather than exploring a ravaged research station, Bioshock is more interested in showing off this new world beneath the waves that is full of terrifying characters living their best lives. There are so many individual moments that demonstrate this game's horror undertones that wouldn't be out of place in any horror game you could name, but ultimately these never truly burst out into overtones because of the power imbalance you have as the protagonist. You know those magic superpowers that let you shoot lightning from your hands? Yeah, I reckon I'll be alright. And despite this, Bioshock never shakes that sense of imminent danger. Rooms are dimly lit and enemies are either fast or very bulky, and so there's never really a time when you can feel any kind of comfort in your surroundings, because you never know when the next fight is coming. Staying in this heightened state of preparedness does tend to push your anxiety levels quite high, and that's without Bioshock deploying some fairly blatant horror tactics like the jump scare with the dentist and the complete body horror of Dr. Steinman. It ends up feeling less like a horror game and more like a first-person shooter that takes place in a chaotic, lawless society, almost as though the gameplay style and environment are deliberately at odds with each other. Seriously though, you could slow down the gameplay and give Jack less powerful weapons and you'd have a fairly traditional horror game without needing to change much else. Later Bioshock games would lose this balance in favour of more comfortable combat in the sequel, and messed up morals coupled with timey-wimey bullshit in Infinite. But that first game was so dedicated to not quite being a horror game that I don't think we could ever get back to that. They're making a new one apparently, so they're welcome to try. This whole video runs off the fact that fear is incredibly subjective. What I find scary won't necessarily be what you find scary, and I could have easily put Kirby's Adventure at number 1 if I was horrified by being eaten by a pink blob with a giant mouth, but alas, I don't think I am. What does get to me, like many others, is a fear of the unknown, which is a powerful source of horror that can take so many different forms and can highlight the scares that are waiting for you in unexpected locations. Thalassophobia is the fear of deep water, but more than that, it's the anxiety you feel when contemplating the vast emptiness of the sea. Ah, but that's not what's scary now, is it? You aren't scared of being alone in the ocean, you're scared of not being alone. Subnautica is such a fucking lie. It sells you a dream of exploring the ocean on an alien planet with some survival elements as you strive to not drown or die of thirst, but it soon becomes very obvious that this magical underwater journey is little more than a front for a masterclass in making you very scared of deep water if you weren't already. It's such a tease though. What starts as a first-person expedition of a water level of a 3D Mario game where you can slowly survey the environment for everything worth documenting, eventually takes a dive into murkier waters filled with nightmarish monsters ranging from irritating leeches like the Bleeders to the absurdity of the crab squid and, oh yeah, the Leviathans. The deeper you go, the more likely it is that you'll find one of these giant sea monsters that are designed to give this underwater world a massive threat. And the first time you're caught and likely killed by a Reaper Leviathan, it will completely change how you view Subnautica. If you stay near the surface, then you can probably just appreciate some fish swimming around like a scene from Finding Nemo, but dive a little deeper and it's as if someone has flooded every single circle of hell. I just want to look at the cute little fishies, okay? Subnautica is like a combination of unknown things by being a game where you explore an ocean on an alien planet, so not only can the creatures be a little bit weird because they're alien, but we don't know a lot about our own oceans, let alone another planet's. It's fucking mortifying to think about. This is RabbidLuigi, and if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave it a like and subscribe for more, and if you want to watch another one right now, there's one here about weird bootleg games. It's kind of funky. I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including Devon Hutt, AJ887, and Jerome Sankara. Thank you for watching, and stay out of the water.